Welcome to Side Effects, effect versus affect. It's hard to know the difference. At McGohan Brabender, our goal is to provoke you to think differently about employee benefits, your employees, and the status quo. That's why it's Side Effects with an A. Join me, Kenzie McEvily, an MB co-host and one of the industry's brightest guests, to dive deep into the process of good employee benefits. Let's get started. Hop in your time machine and travel back 5 years to the year 2016. A popular organization named Airrosti specializes in eliminating pain by delivering high-quality, outcome-based musculoskeletal care, is expanding from Texas to Ohio. MB partnered with them 2 years before, in 2014, with incredible success stories, and we wanted to spread the word. Of course, we asked them to join us on a Side Effects episode for our 20th show. Fast forward to 2021, and for our 103rd episode, we thought it was time to have them back on the show for an update. Musculoskeletal surgery still ranks in the top 3 sources of company claims cost, with studies showing 1 of every 2 Americans having MSK issues. It's easy to see that MSK surgery costs have gotten out of hand for employers. Today, we're joined by Chief Population Health Officer Dr. Cato and Vice President of Business Development Kelly Burchett to catch up on what Airrosti has been up to these past 5 years. We'll touch on their fascinating history, what makes them stand out, and how they've entered the telemedicine world at the perfect time. Welcome to the show. All righty. Anne-Marie, hello. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Kenzie. I'm so happy to be here.
Perfect. And we have some very special guests.
Yes, we
Kelly
do.
is in the studio with us.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks
for having me
here. Yep. And we have Dr. Cato here virtually. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Cato.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome
Thank
both
you.
of you to the show. So excited to be here. And we were having this chat before. So I was the host on the episode 5 years ago when we had your colleague Derek Curley on. And it feels so awesome to be full circle with both of you here now. And I just love Airrosti, and you'll hear that as we talk today. So I was hoping you could both share a little bit of background on yourselves. Dr. Cato, how about if we hear from you?
You bet. Thank you. Chris Cato, like the introduction said, I'm the Chief Population Health Officer at Airrosti. I've been with the organization since the very beginning, so I'm coming up on 17 years now. Started out in practice, and then part of our clinical development team who helps manage and train our providers from a clinical development standpoint. And then probably for the past 7 or 8 years, I've been supporting our business development and strategy teams when we're meeting with employers, carriers, and brokers to talk about strategies for musculoskeletal conditions.
Yeah, that's great. 17 years. Yeah, we haven't known you guys all quite that long, but that's amazing. So how about you, Kelly?
Yeah, thanks so much. Kelly Burchett, Vice President of Business Development for Airrosti here in Ohio. And, I work with great partners like McGohan Brabender, I can't talk this morning, to, help share how Airrosti can be a tool and resource for employer groups to help lower musculoskeletal costs. I've been working in the healthcare industry for about 10 plus years. Actually used to work in a clinical side for a different organization and kind of stepped into Airrosti and really have dove into helping to spread our word and our brand and helping to grow us to be bigger and better.
Perfect. And you're right down in Mason. So
I am.
Just a quick little drive up
Nice little
here
jump up. I'm from Troy, Ohio, so I have Dayton roots. So, happy
Love
to
it.
come up.
So, Dr. Cato, you are a founding provider of Airrosti. Can you give our listeners a summary about Airrosti? Because some may know nothing at all about it. And also, there's a fun little fact of what Airrosti stands for. I think, Anne-Marie, do you want to take a shot at this real quick?
Well, we were having this discussion. So when we very first learned about Airrosti, I quickly learned from Derek that it's an acronym. So let's see if I can get it right
All
and
right,
then
here
not
you
to
go.
steal your thunder. So applied integration of rapid recovery of soft tissue injury. Yes?
That's correct. Great job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bingo.
Okay. But let's hear from the experts. So Dr. Cato.
So yeah, so that is a mouthful, right? That applied integration for the rapid recovery of soft tissue injuries, and really what Airrosti is known for is that rapid recovery. We talk about fixing injuries fast. Our average treatment duration is 3.2 visit average, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But in essence, we're a provider group. Sometimes with that name Airrosti, I think sometimes in the clinical field, in the clinical world, they attribute it to being either a procedure or a technique, but we're a provider providers of doctors of chiropractic or doctors of physical therapy, and we practice in a very evidence-based and outcome-based fashion. Today, we have almost 300 providers. We're in 4 states. So we're in Ohio, of course. We're in Virginia, the state of Washington, and Texas. And then we recently launched Airrosti Remote Recovery, which is now available in about 46, 47 states. Hopefully, we'll have 50 by the end of the year. But like I said earlier, we have over 17 years of clinical experience of managing acute and chronic musculoskeletal conditions. And earlier this year, we eclipsed the 1 million patient reported outcome mark. So that means we treated 1 million patients, and we have the outcomes that support the clinical work that we're doing.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
And I thought something that was interesting in our pre-call, Dr. Cato, you kind of brought up how Airrosti was the origin was from professional sports, right? Can you touch on that just a little bit? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, so in the early days, I guess you could say we were young and dumb or naive, right? And so we were really focused on the sports world and primarily focused on targeting professional athletes and college athletes. It didn't take long to realize or understand that professional athletes are even less than 1% of the population. So it was going to be hard to keep the lights on. And I will say our growth and expansion into the proper healthcare world in terms of collaborating and partnering with the insurance carriers and the employers was really brought on by the success we were having with the professional athletes and also the college athletes, which then trickled down into the high school athletes as well. And we started getting into the community and get introductions into the health plans, into the carriers, into the employers.
Yeah, it's a great proving ground, though, because I have told that story, where you got your start, your roots, because athletes want to get back in the game, right? Like the next quarter, the next minute, the next time if they can get back in, and getting them to a point where they can be, game ready that quick. People understand that, right? And so it's a really easy way to tell the story to say, do you want to, be in your life? Do you want to be sitting on the couch or sitting still, or do you want to play with your kids or play in your sports league or, do whatever it is you do? So I love that story. And, from a healthcare standpoint, I think Kenzie mentioned this in the opening as well, that MSK is usually in the top 1, 2, or 3 in terms of spend. And it's not only the surgery cost, it's not only the, physical therapy or the 20 visit cost where, I go and I'm not improving and I have to also sit on my couch and not, take any action and be still. That's not helpful, as you're going to talk about. But it's the drug cost too. We're seeing a lot of treatment with pain drugs, and, we've got, studies upon studies that are showing that too. So we know that it's a very expensive proposition, and it's not just for those professional athletes or those college athletes, or even those high school athletes. It's for people who sit at their desk wrong or bend over to pick something up off the floor and then don't stand back up, as some of my colleagues have experienced. So what are the most common types of injuries, and who's getting hurt?
Well, it's really everybody's getting hurt. And when we talk about different types of injuries, it is whether it's acute or chronic, and it's truly musculoskeletal, Airrosti should have an impact. And really, when you look at the evidence and research, patients should start with conservative care treatment as long as there's not a fracture or a full rupture tear. And that's typically the problem when we're seeing with this crisis with musculoskeletal. Patients don't know where to begin with care. And then once they do enter the system, oftentimes there's little to no care coordination amongst the providers, and conservative care is oftentimes not inserted into the treatment plan in an early enough time frame. Because there's usually typically a rush to imaging and also a rush to pharmaceuticals, which creates that cost. But the evidence and the clinical guidelines highlight and show that even before an image, as long as there's not a full rupture tear or a fracture, a patient should have at least 6 weeks of conservative care even before ordering the MRI of the low back. And so that's what we're really focused on is getting involved early as possible in the episode. And it really helps prevent a lot of unnecessary imaging and a lot of unnecessary procedures as well.
And I feel a little naive when I first started at MB. People were raving about Airrosti, and I thought it was like a chiropractor. I was like, well, you manual therapy treatment, and that, I guess that buzzword manual therapy, it was hard for me to understand. So what exactly is this manual therapy treatment, and how is this approach different from what they might think a chiropractor does?
Yeah, so I think first, before you get to the manual therapy piece, though, you have to have an accurate diagnosis. And so you have to have quality time with this patient to determine where we're going to apply that manual therapy. So that's really the key, the first step. It's like, let's do a great evaluation assessment. Let's find out the key structures that are involved with this patient's condition. And then we can start talking about the manual therapy. But in particular, there's really only two modalities that we utilize in the Airrosti clinics and through Airrosti Remote Recovery, and that's manual therapy in conjunction with active care exercises. But for manual therapy, again, it's hands-on treatment. It's identifying tissues that need to be restored to range of motion and strength. So it's applying specific pressure onto the connective tissue and the muscle tissue to help bring about that normal range of motion and help improve strength and quality of function.
Yeah. And
when you look at, but also manual therapy is kind of a big box of different tools and modalities that can be included in there. So everything from a chiropractic manipulation would be considered manual therapy. However, at Airrosti, we do not do chiropractic manipulation, but we are utilizing our hands to help restore normative range of motion and function.
Yeah. And I think, having been there many times myself, having my kids go several times and referring many of my friends, clients, patients to you all, it's been really amazing. And so I know the answer to this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So how quickly, after a patient is seen, how quickly do they heal after working with Airrosti?
So it depends, right? It depends on the patient and it depends upon the condition. What we are looking to see as a provider when a patient comes into our practice, our goal with every single patient, depending on what their condition is to get the patient to 95% pain-free range of motion at that first visit. Because if you're able to do that, then you can also inject very specific and sometimes very aggressive active care exercises, which will help speed up the healing process. So that first visit really determines the treatment plan. It determines if I'm going to see you for 3 visits or 4 visits or 2 visits, or it's also going to determine if I need to refer you out to a specialist, right? So if you come in, we don't think that you have an obvious contraindication or red flag. We do some testing, maybe there's some yellow flags, and there's zero response after that first visit. Most of the times we know that we're going to need to refer you out either back to your primary care or to a specialist. But again, on that first visit, we are looking for significant improvement, and that's what determines the treatment plan.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Airrosti different. You guys are looking to treat what you can and refer what you can't. And we so appreciate that style of practicing. Our clients feel comfortable when they go there. They feel like if you can't help them, you're not going to force that issue. And that's really amazing. And the other thing is that you want them to keep moving, right? The whole goal is let's get you to keep moving, not get you to restrict. So I just love the whole process.
And
yeah, movement is the key.
Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Cato. What'd you say?
I was just saying, yep, Anne's exactly correct. Movement is the key.
And I wanted our listeners to know that Kelly is still here.
Yes.
I do have another question for you.
Yes.
So Anne-Marie kind of hit on it. How is Airrosti different? But why should people be adding Airrosti to their employee benefit program?
Yeah, so we have our care piece, which Dr. Cato just talked through, but then we also have this other side where we do work with you all to come to your clients and say, hey, we're Airrosti. Here's our treatment model. We've been proven by third parties to be able to lower your claims by up to 40% because we are that straight point. We can give you an accurate diagnosis. We can help show you where to go. We're not going to run you through your visits just to run you through your visits.
Right.
We really 3 to 4 visits, and that's you start to like your doctors. We have patients who are like, well, let's just do one more, but we want to get you back to doing what you want to do. So we have that great opportunity to help lower an employer's claim savings, as well as be a great tool and resource to help guide folks into the musculoskeletal space, because there's so many different places to go. You could go to the emergency room, you can go to primary care, you can pop that pain pill that's been sitting in your medicine cabinet for Lord knows how long. And we don't want you doing any of those. Yeah. We want you to come to the right place at the right time and try to go from there. So with that, we can come in and bring in a team of account managers to even do complimentary musculoskeletal wellness, because, as Anne-Marie, you're saying, sitting at a desk, all of us are trained to work on a manufacturing line. You're not trained to sit at your desk all day or stand at your desk all day, or to be wearing, crazy workout shoes on the weekends and then come and then sit all day long. So we have completely free musculoskeletal programming that we'll bring on site. We can do it virtually with our great providers to help show folks, hey, here's what you can do first to not even need us. But if you do, we're available and we can help.
Yeah. I do have a question. So I sprained my ankle a few weeks ago. A little embarrassing. Tripped over a tree. But I came into work and I was like, I don't know. Should I call Airrosti? Could they fix this sprain? I was like, the emergency room would be expensive. I'd have to wait. Like, so what would you have suggested for that? Is a sprain something you guys can fix?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So musculoskeletal is everything head to toe, even tension headaches, even TMJ, plantar fasciitis, anything. We are that great first stop for you to come on in. If one of our providers does the assessment and we do think it's something that is a break or a tear, we'll refer you out right away and not charge you for that visit. So we're always that safe first place to go. And most times we'll be able to help you and get you kind of feeling back better, especially with an ankle sprain.
Yeah, I think that most people don't understand that the connective tissue is pretty much everything that isn't a bone, right?
It is.
Right.
And, you all have been great with coming on site and doing an Airrosti day at an employer where you'll actually, bring a provider and do a handful of visits to get the group comfortable with it. Doing the free sessions where you're doing, a lunch and learn, or even just a 20-minute, hey, here's how to stretch.
Yep.
That was great during COVID. I attended several of those, and you don't really understand what you're doing to your body when you sit in a particular position for a long period of time, or even if you've injured something, then your body holds it still, and now you're injuring something else. And so what I've been so impressed with you all is just the education you provide the patients and the amount of time and care. So maybe talk a little bit about that and how that visit goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Cato, jump in whenever you want. But, we for our in-clinic visits, we spend an hour one-on-one with our patients. And that's not just so we can, use our thumbs and dig in on that patient for an hour.
Although you do that.
Although we do that, not for an hour. But it really is to, as Dr. Cato mentioned, come to that accurate diagnosis and educate the patient on why we think you're here. Maybe your pain's coming from your shoulder, but maybe that's not where it's coming from. You feel it in your shoulder. Maybe it's coming from your neck. Maybe it's coming from your back. And really working through that root cause and being able to tie it back to everyday activities that you can still keep doing, but hey, here's some ways that we think that you can do those maybe in a little bit safer way. And that's the exact same way we do with we call it pre-act, our on-site wellness engagements, is where hey, you're sitting at a desk all day. We're not telling you to do anything differently, but maybe get up and move, or here's some stretches to do if you start to feel that 2 o'clock tension headache coming on. Here's the posture that's making that happen. So maybe have a couple postural cues through your day to sit up, do some different things. It's so funny when we do them in person and webinars, because we encourage folks to keep their cameras on. But you see everybody start to sit up a little straighter, or they're like, oh yeah, you can tell that they're like feeling the pain and they know exactly what we're talking about. So we really value that education to be that resource. And then again, kind of sell our brand about, come and check us out. If you don't know what's going on, we want to be that source for you. We really have grown from word of mouth by wonderful people like you, Anne Marie, of just saying, hey, not that it's safe, but it works. And this is what they're doing. And that's how we've grown here in Ohio.
Yeah. And so for many of our self-funded employers, we've talked with them about adding this as a benefit to their plan and really promoting it, either incentivizing on it or making it a reduced cost, or adding it if it's not contracted in their network on a direct basis. And you mentioned earlier that you've been validated by third parties, and I know that you've had the study done twice now, I think, by Milliman, looking at the reduction in claims and the overall patient, the effectiveness of the treatment. And we've seen that you can reduce that MSK cost, and maybe I got an old number here in my head, but by around 25%. Maybe it's higher.
40%.
Wow.
So
40%
versus traditional care.
Right. So if it's number 1, 2, or 3 spend in a health plan, and we can reduce that by 40%. I mean, for one of my clients, that was a mid 6-figure reduction on a manufacturing floor. And their people were happy and they raved about it. And even in a union environment where typically that can be very difficult, people feel better and they're happy about that. So, how do you work with a self-funded employer, or what would you say to them if what you can say to them, because you have the mic?
Yeah. So, having all of our great data, and as you mentioned, our third-party data research studies done, we're in network with most major insurance, and if we're not, we have a really simple form that's signed that I work with that TPA or that carrier and can implement the benefit. We did that with MB. So it's a very simple process. There's no cost, no fee. If there is, Airrosti absorbs that because we are so confident and passionate in our treatment and know that we are that right choice. But we'll help cover those fees for you. But we're typically already lying in someone's insurance, health plan, and they just don't know that we're there.
Right.
So it's kind of bringing us to light and forefront, and that's where that value-based benefit creation kind of comes into place, is because when people are looking at where to go, they're going to look for the lowest cost, highest quality, which we believe we are. So however we can help pull that to the front of a health plan, or incentivize it with, HSA contributions or different things along those lines, we are always open to do that and are completely supportive, and can help back that up. We have every type of marketing material already made. We really find value in our programming that it's not something extra anyone in HR or wellness has to take on, because they already have a trillion things. You get a dedicated account manager from Airrosti that helps you start to finish once everything's going, keep engagement going, help answer any questions you may have, and really be that point person for each employer group.
Yeah, thank you.
So
and Maria, on that, I was real quick on that claim study that you referenced earlier, just so the audience knows, there's a 43% reduction in total cost of care when an Airrosti provider is managing that case, compared to all other provider types. So that's MDs, DCs, PTs, and DOs. And a lot of that savings is attributed to our ability to reduce surgical utilization by 80%. And high-tech imaging by 67%. And then recently, we had enough claims data to look at opioid utilization. Even though our providers do not prescribe opioids, we don't have the prescription rights for that, we do show that there's a 50% reduction in opioid utilization when an Airrosti provider is managing that case.
Yeah, that's a big deal, especially
Wow.
for our part of the country where that is a very large issue. So thank you for sharing that. So we can make that, that's public, right? We can
Yep.
make that available
Yep.
on our website following
Yep.
our show today.
we love the data.
Yes, thank you.
So, Dr. Cato, too, I would like to get into another topic I'm excited to talk about, is how Airrosti has entered the telemedicine realm. And I'm a big fan of telemedicine. I think that also has to do with being a millennial, but
Rub it in.
I know, I'm sorry.
Kenzie's young. We all know.
We were talking about that before this,
Well, many people might think it's triggered from COVID, but really that's not the case with Airrosti. So can you share some details about your remote recovery program, and how does it work? And you would think if you need to be touching people to fill the tissues that are injured, how does this work through the computer?
You're right. That's a great question. We've actually been building Airrosti remote recovery for the past 3 years. So this was definitely a pre-COVID idea. We actually hit the accelerator a little bit once the pandemic hit to try to get it out there, to try to help people as best as we could. We were planning on launching July of last year, but we ended up going and launching a little bit earlier. We were ready. We were already doing some piloting, and so we decided to go ahead and launch. But 3 years ago, our leadership came to the clinical development team and said, hey, we need to create this digital clinic for musculoskeletal for our patients. Our employer partners and our carrier partners were really demanding it. They love what we do for in-clinic, and they love what we do for in the large population areas that we're in, but they were really struggling with a solution for their remote patients and patients that are in states where we are not able to be there from a brick and mortar standpoint. And so we created Airrosti Remote Recovery. There were 2 hurdles, though, that our clinical development team had to overcome in order to meet the standards of what leadership was asking, because they wanted to make sure that we were still delivering exceptional patient outcomes and also exceptional patient experience. So those 2 hurdles that we had to overcome was, how are we going to actually evaluate and diagnose these patients without actually being in the room with the patient? And then secondly, probably what you're thinking about, how are you going to use your hands to do the manual therapy without being in the room and not being able to put your hand or thumb through the smartphone or the laptop? So I'll start with the first hurdle, right? This orthopedic examination. So what we did is we took all of our functional testing, range of motion testing, functional testing, and we created 7 different movement screens and recorded those with a demonstration patient. In the first exam, and these visits with our provider and the patient are digital, virtual, just like a FaceTime visit. When it comes to that point in the first visit when we're going to examine the patient, we hit play on that video. The patient can see the video, and the provider is watching the patient basically mirror the range of motions that the demonstration patient is doing. So even though we're not in the room, we're still able to do all the functional testing, range of motion testing, and orthopedic testing, and still arrive at a very accurate diagnosis. Now, once we have arrived at that accurate diagnosis, as you know, now it's time to prescribe active care exercises and manual therapy. active care exercises for us was really an easy hurdle there because we've been doing that for the past 7 or 8 years. We prescribe those exercises in clinic and then we send them to you via your patient portal. But the manual therapy piece was a little bit trickier. So what we did is we put together an Airrosti remote recovery kit that is full of some Airrosti tools. So if you're a patient, we prescribe lacrosse balls and foam rollers. So those are staples that are in the kit as well. But we have added some additional stretching, strengthening, and mobility tools. What's great is that kit shows up at the patient's doorstep 48 hours after their first visit and just in time for their second visit, where we do an unboxing with the patient, walk them through the different tools, and then prescribe additional specific manual therapy, self-myofascial release exercises for their recovery process.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, who knew that a lacrosse ball and a foam roller were going to be my best friends? But they are. So, now that you've been doing this for a little bit of time, what are the outcomes like compared to your in-clinic visits? Because I'm sure you're measuring them against one another.
Yeah, they're surprising. I'll say that. Before we launched Airrosti Remote Recovery, if you would have told me we'd have been at 80% patient satisfaction and maybe 75% injury resolution, I would have been thrilled. I think that would have been a great number to hit. But when we compare brick and mortar side by side with Airrosti Remote Recovery, the differences are very small. So just for the audience, so brick and mortar, patient satisfaction, 99.5. Airrosti Remote Recovery, 98.7.
Wow. That's impressive.
Injury resolution, 88% in brick and mortar, 85% for Airrosti Remote Recovery. And then our visit average is 3.2 for brick and mortar, and we're averaging 4.0 visits in Airrosti Remote Recovery. But here's the great thing about Airrosti Remote Recovery for the employers and other folks that are listening out there. You have access to your patient for a full 12 months as it relates to that specific injury or condition. You have unlimited virtual calls as needed, and you also have unlimited text feature with your provider for the entire course of care. So we want to make sure that we're being accountable to that patient's outcome.
Right. It's really cool. I love that program. And I was a little skeptical of it at first, even though I'm an Airrosti all the way kind of person. I was like, virtual?
It's hard when you know the thumbs to think.
I know. And those thumbs are deadly. And you said put the thumb through the phone, and I literally thought you were going to say put your thumb through your tissue, and because that's feeling the pain. So along those same lines as virtual care, you guys have rolled out another new feature, right? And so talk to me about this VIP chat and what that is and how this works.
So this may be probably the most exciting thing that we talk about today. And this was actually a germination of an idea from a large national employer that we're working with. They wanted to create a front door for musculoskeletal. They wanted it to be easy, they wanted it to be simple, and they wanted it to be no cost. And so what we created was VIP chat. This is an opportunity to talk with any Airrosti provider virtually to talk about their injury or condition. And what we're going to do is we're going to help make sure, is it musculoskeletal in nature? Is there a contraindication for conservative care? And do they meet medical necessity for care? If they do, then we provide steerage through that platform as well. So if there is a medical intervention that needs to happen, we're going to steer that patient to their primary care provider. If an employer partner has invested in a nurse case management group or a care coordination group, and they want to steer all specialty referrals through that group, we're able to do that as well. And then, of course, if the patient meets conservative care and they're a candidate for either Airrosti Remote Recovery or there's a brick and mortar location, we'll give them the option for that as well. And then understanding that Airrosti Remote Recovery is available in 46 states. Oftentimes we go, well, what do you do for somebody who lives in Omaha, Nebraska, and they need to go to a specialist? Well, we've invested in a relationship with a group called Health at Scale, who is helping us identify really best-in-class specialists, and not just best-in-class, but they're pairing and matching our data, that patient's data, with the claims data as it relates to specific providers in that market. So we're really pairing the best provider for that patient and their condition that they're presenting with.
All at the same time, keeping in consideration their health plan. So making sure every recommendation is still in network for them and that it's an option. So,
wow. Yeah, that's really exciting. That's really amazing.
And do you have some feedback from employers, Kelly?
You know, having that front door, you know, talking about your sprained ankle, this is that perfect opportunity. It's a telemedicine visit, so you can do it at home. You can do it at the office. You know, typically we can schedule those, you know, pretty close to the time that you reach out. So it's a really great opportunity for a patient who might be scared to go to Airrosti to have that first touch and that first hit.
Right.
Again, to go to either Airrosti Remote Recovery if you're more comfortable there, or if there is a brick and mortar and clinic option available for you, we can triage you there. And so these providers, that they do this all the time. So they're great at having the conversations, talking virtually with someone. It's comfortable because you're already in your own setting. And then we can explain our course of care to you, what it'll look like, and then set you up with those next steps. So it's a great free tool.
Right. Yes.
Free tool that every one of our employer groups have been screaming from the rooftops to their employees. We're seeing great conversations happen around it. It's getting posted on internal webinars networks, Teams pages, just as if you have anything musculoskeletal, please go here first.
Wow.
Right.
And so just to elaborate a little bit, when Kelly says free, there's no cost to the employer or to the carrier or to the patient.
Not at all. Yes. No claim is being built.
It's strange that we have to describe what free means in today's world,
It
but
feels
we
like there's
do.
always an asterisk there.
Yes.
And this is truly with this, you know, our on-site wellness complimentary free as well. There's no extra things that come along with either of those. So
Right. Well, unfortunately, we are nearing the end of the show, but I'd like to hear from you both about what you think the future of Airrosti looks like. I know we just talked about that incredible patient milestone you guys hit. So what exactly is the future of musculoskeletal telemedicine and Airrosti, and whoever wants to go first?
You know, I get asked this question quite a bit. So sometimes when I'm involved in interviewing new folks that are coming on to Airrosti, and I'll just kind of answer it the same way. I hate to try to put a prediction on it because I don't know if I could serve it justice. You know, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, where do I think Airrosti would be? Honestly, I couldn't have imagined this. And so
Right.
I think one of our goals have always been to be able to be in 50 states. Well, we're almost in 46 states now with Airrosti Remote Recovery. And I think for us, we've always had this kind of renegade attitude of wanting to change the way healthcare is delivered, particularly in musculoskeletal, but also kind of redefine the space as well. And I think we're being successful at it. I think for me, though, kind of where I'd love to see Airrosti is almost kind of like a name brand solution in all 50 states. And that patient knows that when you start for care for musculoskeletal, start with Airrosti first because it'll get you on the right path.
Yeah.
I love that.
yeah, so same thing for me. I hope that Airrosti is a household name, you know, that we're really that front door in musculoskeletal. We are the tried and true solution nationally, that we can be that resource. You know, we're so lucky to have our 4 states that people know us, but even in Ohio, you know, we're working to grow ourselves, you know, further north, and having Airrosti Remote Recovery be that opportunity to help spread the word is amazing. And, you know, I'm hoping again, musculoskeletal claims get out of the top 1, 2, and 3 for employer groups, and that we're having these amazing outcomes, and that slowly starts to go down as the world stays active, but that Airrosti can help deliver that care nationally.
Well, we're very, very excited for what the future holds and for what you have available right now. And thank you for being here. And if they want to check out your website,
Yeah, head to www.airrosti.com, and that's AIRROSTI.com. If you hit /employers, that'll take you to a lot of the data and the claim studies we spoke to today and exactly how we can integrate into a health plan. Or if you do /VIP chat, you can schedule your free virtual pain and injury assessment with Airrosti.
Excellent. Well, we thank you guys so much for joining us, and especially
Thank
doing a part
you.
2. This was a fun little
We
update.
love all of our MBers, and thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you. And to our listeners, if you have any questions or topic suggestions, you can email me at Kenzie@healthierbirthdays.com.
or you can email me at ann@healthierbirthdays.com.
And thank you so much for listening to Side Effects. We will see you next time.
Thank you.